Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A very weird city to be in. But anyway, Philly once had a hockey team way back in the 30s. Yes, that's right. The 1930-31 season, they had the Philadelphia Quakers, the team that had moved from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to play in their arenas. But the Quakers were terrible in 1931. They only won 4 games in their season and practically just disbanded after the season. They were nothing but pugilists, if you will, because one of the owners was Betty Leonard, a former boxing pugilist himself. So anyway, Philadelphia is also notorious for being the city that nearly got the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1927, but thankfully Conn Smythe saved the team at the proper time. So anyway, the Philadelphia Flyers were made in 1967 thanks to the great efforts of Ed Snyder, who wanted an NHL team to share space with his NBA side, the Philadelphia 76ers. So his persistence pays off, and Philadelphia really gets a team. Philly actually looked good. A lot of people thought Philly would be weak with their offense and all that, but thankfully they did very well, especially with a young Bertie Perrant plucked for the Boston organization. The Flyers looked pretty decent. The Flyers may have won the 68 Western Division in regular season, but the playoffs were a different story as they got knocked out by the Blues in 7 games. The Flyers were actually hosting a couple of weird things from 67-68. First of all, Larry Seidel, who was a player who was an AHL journeyman, who basically decided to write resume and cover letter on how he would be such a good player in the system, and the Flyers decided to take a flyer on him, no pun intended. Anyway, Seidel got in trouble for anti-Semitic comments. Well, thinking people made anti-Semitic comments, and then he got angry. But anyway, the second part was that the Flyers did not play all their home games at the Philadelphia Spectrum. One reason, there was a huge windstorm in March of 1968, and it blew sections off the roof, the Spectrum. So the Spectrum had to be repaired, and the Flyers had to play home games in New York, Toronto, and then basically they went to Quebec to play because Quebec was their AHL affiliate. Philly did okay, but I mean, loss of a lot of revenue hurt the team a lot. But the Flyers would actually do a whole lot better for themselves. Although in 1972, they were actually taken out on the final day of the year by the Buffalo Sabres with a Jerry Meehan goal with 4 seconds left for the Sabres. But the Flyers decided in the early 70s that speed and finesse were not enough. They decided to bring in some brawlers like Andre Dupont, Bob Moose Kelly, Ed Van Imp, and Dave the Hammer Schultz. So basically, they were pugilists and were going to bully their way to the cup and all that. In 74, it worked out that way. They took care of the Boston Bruins that had Bobby Orr on their side. They even won game 2 in overtime, a famous game that the Flyers finally won in the Boston Garden. The Flyers ended up winning the series in game 6 on home ice thanks to a Moose Dupont goal that was actually given to Rick McLeish because it was a deflection off McLeish. The Flyers did it. In 1975, they proved themselves better as they actually got to their second straight Stanley Cup final, and this time they beat the Buffalo Sabres in the first ever matchup of non-original 6 teams in the Stanley Cup finals. As the Flyers took care of the Sabres in 6 games, winning the series despite the fog game in game 3 ruining the Flyers' chances of a potential sweep. But they got their Stanley Cup win. The Flyers kept brawling around until 1976 when a combination of Wayne Stevenson having to come in for Bernie Perrant because of an injury and the Habs actually fighting back against the Flyers, they lost the plot. The Flyers were toasted in game 2 on a Larry Robinson check on a Flyer. I don't know who it was, but it dented the foreign board so badly they had to delay the game for 20 minutes. So since Montreal could hit back, literally, the Flyers just couldn't play their game. Even though Reggie Leach scored 19 goals in the postseason, which is an NHL record. Well, that was in 1976. He couldn't do much against Montreal. He did score a pair of goals, including one in the final game against the Habitants, but nothing doing. Ken Dryden had his magic, and the Flyers lost the plot. The Flyers would not be super competitive until 1980 when they had a magical 35-game unbeaten streak, 25 wins, 10 losses, and 10 ties, and they were on top of the world. The Flyers would face the upstart New York Islanders in the Stanley Cup Finals, and everyone thought the Flyers would definitely win now. Sadly, though, the Flyers went down in 6 games. I mean, you can blame Leon Stickel for the blown call that Clark Gillies was offside, and he didn't think they were offside. But you also have to know that you could have finished the game in regulation, and you failed, and then Bob Nystrom scored the overtime winner to sink the Flyers. The Flyers tried to get better and all that, but their star players were aging. Did I ever mention that Bobby Clark was such a good player? And then all of a freaking sudden, well, he was good. He was the heart and soul of the Flyers. He was a diabetic. Before diabetics could really do well in sports, he had sugar problems. He was diabetic. But thankfully, though, he didn't really have any diabetic issues, and he played the game hard and fast. The Flyers stumbled upon a diamond in the rough. Not me, but anyway, in Sweden, by the name of Pelle Lindberg. Pelle Lindberg helped the team in 1985 get to the Stanley Cup Finals. He was good, but unfortunately, the Edmonton Oilers ruined his confidence and shelled him. Lindberg was doing decent for the Flyers, but one fateful November day, 1985, things changed. He got into his Porsche 911 Turbo, a very fast car, and hit a retaining wall somewhere in New Jersey. Worst part is, Pelle was legally drunk, twice the legal limit in Pennsylvania or New Jersey, and he crushed his car. Basically, he was brain dead. His parents put him on life support. The Flyers have been jinxed by terrible goaltending ever since Pelle's death. Ron Hextall, when he was healthy, was good, but he couldn't be healthy, and also a lot of suspensions fucked him over. However, the Flyers regrouped in 1987 and got to the Stanley Cup Finals. Heck, they even put Edmonton to the brink with a Game 6 overtime goal by J.J. Dane, or was it like a late goal? But anyway, the Oilers did win Game 7 at home 3-1, and Hextall, despite being on the losing team, was named Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Should have been DeCurry or Messier. But anyway, I digress. The Flyers suffered a fatal blow to Washington in the 1988 playoffs, and then basically Ron Hextall got himself into trouble, especially in the 89 conference final when the Flyers took care of the Canadiens. Well, were taken care of. In Game 1, Brian Propp was massacred on a hit by Chris Chelios that basically put him injured. About to lose Game 6 and the series, Ron Hextall decided that nothing mattered anymore, and he went after Chelios for what he did to Propp, victimizing himself for 12 games. It's ironic that Ron Hextall's attitude was not apparent in the 1987 pregame brawl between the Flyers and Canadiens in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup semifinals, when Ed Hospodar was trying to hurt Claude Lemieux after trying to ruin the Montreal thing of shooting the puck into an empty net at the far end of the rink in warm-ups. Ron Hextall was ready to charge out there, but Mike Keenan really held him up, saying that I already have Chico in the net. Chico in the brawl. If I lose you, I don't have a goalie. And he locked Ron Hextall in the room. Cooler heads would prevail and the Flyers would get to the Stanley Cup final. As I said, Hextall would have been healthy. The Flyers did get a big boon in 1992 when they got Eric Lindros, mostly because Lindros refused to go to Quebec City because of the French language barrier, and his parents thought that Quebec City would not give him a lot of things and all that. So basically, Lindros went to Philly. Unfortunately, the trade actually ended up in Quebec's favor as they ran with it. They ran with Mike Lee, Mike Ricci, Steve Duchesne, Peter Forsberg, especially Peter Forsberg, and they gave up Ron Hextall. They gave up their temperamental goalie. Hextall did okay in his 1 year in Quebec City. Then he went to the others, and then others traded him to Philadelphia. So anyway, the Flyers lost out on the trade. Really lost out, especially with Forsberg. But Lindros did have a good rookie campaign. Sadly, though, his rookie campaign would be overshadowed by Teemu Selanne of the Winnipeg Jets. Anyway, the Flyers in '95 went on a magical run, buoyed by a big trade that they got John Leclerc and Eric Desjardins from Montreal just for Mark Recchi and some other things. Oh yeah, they got Gilbert Dion too, but Gilbert Dion had nothing left. The Flyers looked good. Leclerc and Desjardins were huge, especially Leclerc with Lindros and Renberg, the Legion of Doom line. Flyers got to the Final Four. Unfortunately, the Devils, who were on this role of being road warriors, skunked the Flyers and went to the Stanley Cup Finals when the Devils won the Stanley Cup. I could have easily done the '95 Flyers as my what if because, then against the Red Wings. But I think the Red Wings probably would have done it. In '97, the Flyers went to the finals and lost to the Red Wings. In 4 straight, nothing could work. Flyers had a few decent years. 2002 was supposed to be their brand year. Unfortunately, the Flyers could only afford 3 goals on Ottawa as they got taken out in 5 games by the Senators, who then got taken out by the Leafs, who got taken out by the Canes, and then Canes who got taken out by the Red Wings. It all works out. The Flyers would have a few decent runs in the 2000s. 2004, they almost sunk the number 1 seed Tampa Bay Lightning in the conference finals, but they lost Game 7 in Tampa. The Flyers would also have a magical year in 2010 when they were the 7th seed. They actually had to win on the final day of the year against the New York Rangers to get a playoff spot in a shootout, kind of like what the Islanders did in 2007. So anyway, the Flyers took care of the New Jersey Devils in the first round, and then they took on the Boston Bruins. Boston took a 3-game series lead. It was like, well, Boston versus maybe Montreal or Pittsburgh. We don't know what would happen. Unfortunately, though, Philly didn't let go. Simon Gagne scored a seemingly meaningless Game 4 overtime goal, but it brought momentum to Philly. Philly uses the momentum and wins the series in 7 games. What's ironic about the Flyers' 3-0 comeback was that they actually were down 3-0 in Game 7 to the Bruins and then scored 4 goals to win the game. Flyers were going to face the number 8 seed Montreal Canadiens in the conference finals. I kid you not, it was 7 versus 8. Flyers ended up winning that series in 6, I do believe. And then the Flyers took on the Hawks in the Stanley Cup Finals, and unfortunately Patrick Kane beat the Flyers in Game 6 overtime to win the cup for the Blackhawks. Flyers haven't had too many heights since then, but they're young. So anyway, let's talk about the 1996 Flyers. There's a reason why they're my what if. The 96 Flyers were the number 1 seed in the East, only by a few points over the Pittsburgh Penguins, or was it the other way around? Looking at my stat sheet, the Flyers actually had 4 fewer wins than Pittsburgh, but they had 9 extra ties. Wins, of course, were 2 points, so that's 8, and then the 9, so 9 minus 8. They beat the Penguins by 1 point. So anyway, the Flyers were number 1 seed just by an inch. So anyway, the Flyers had their hands full with the Tampa Bay Lightning, who basically came from out of nowhere in their 4th pro season to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Tampa, heck, even had a 2-1 series lead after Alex Ivanoff overtime goal in Game 3. At the Tropicana Stadium. I kid you not, the Trop used to have hockey in it. But anyway, Flyers pulled 3 straight wins to knock the Lightning out. Then the Flyers took on the Florida Panthers, who also were making their first Stanley Cup appearance. But the Panthers were in their 3rd season, unlike their Florida brethren. And the Panthers, for some reason, managed to take care of the Philadelphia Flyers in 6 games. Panthers would go on to beat the Penguins shockingly in the Eastern Finals before going to the Stanley Cup Finals and getting swept by the Colorado Avalanche. Of course, Florida used the rats on the ice to distract them. Heck, the guy who started this Radcray Scott Mellenby actually was a former Flyer who played for the '87 team that went to the finals. So anyway, easy peasy, lemon squeezy with this. What if Flyers replace the Panthers in the Stanley Cup semifinals? They'll take on the Penguins, and the Flyers by 1 point had home ice. So we'll see what happens. Colorado, obviously, we don't touch the Western Conference, so Colorado will host the final. If the Flyers fail against the Penguins, then Colorado will win the Stanley Cup because Colorado won it in real life. So here we go. All right, so it's the Penguins and the Flyers. You see, their Penguins had more wins, but the Flyers had more ties. They had 9 points from ties, where the Penguins had 8 points from wins. So 1 point. So yeah, Barrasso versus Hextall. Ron Hextall gets beaten in overtime by the Penguins. Penguins take a 2-0 lead on goals by Lemieux and Yager. Boy, Mario Lemieux in his return from his 1-year sabbatical looked good. Dale Hawerchuk for the Flyers and scored to make it 2-1, and then Lindros made it 2-2. Flyers had an early power play. Brett Fedek made it 3-2. John Leclerc made it 4-2 before Patrick Schulin made it 5-2. Barrasso is gone. Reagan's in the net. Michael Renberg gets booted for 10 minutes for unsportsmanlike conduct. But the Penguins use that to their advantage without Renberg around. Marcus Naslin and Ron Francis scored goals while Renberg is technically not allowed to play. Peter Nedved made it 5-5, and then in overtime, Thomas Sandstrom, the Sandstorm, made it 6-5. Ken Reagan was great in relief, 23 saves. Brett Fedek got injured after he scored a goal. Not good for the Flyers. So the Penguins decide to go with Ken Reagan because why not? Plan didn't work, even though that Reagan won the game. Flyers win 7-5. It was a tight one. Thomas Sandstrom and Mario Lemieux made it 2-0 Penguins. Dave Roach of the '96 Penguins got ejected for charging. Then the Flyers scored a pair of goals. Michael Renberg with both of them. Chris Taylor made it 3-2 Penguins. Brett Fedek made it 3-3 for Pat Falloon. Remember him, Sharks fans? Made it 4-3. Eric Lindros scores a pair of goals, which makes Reggett go down to Barrasso. Yager scores a pair of goals to make it 6-5. And John Leclerc scores an empty net goal to ice the game, 7-5. Dave Roach gets ejected. Lindros, Yager, Renberg. So the series is tied at 1 each. They decide to go back to Barrasso when they go to Pittsburgh. And then the Flyers win 3-1. John Drews, remember him, Washington fans? He scored to make it 1-0. Lindros made it 2-0 and 3-0. Peter Nedved scored a late goal for the Penguins, but it was all too late. Lindros, Barrasso, Hextall. It's like, what the heck is going on? John Drews? Really? Really? 2-1. Penguins decide to keep Barrasso in, thinking it was a fluke. And perfectly placed. 8-3 your score, so it's 2-2. Penguins put up 3 quick goals. Naslin, Lemieux, Nedved. Dale Hawerchuk scores for the Flyers. Dave Roach for the Penguins, 4-1. Mario Lemieux scores, so Hextall's gone. Snow's in the net. Lindros makes it 5-2. Nedved made it 6-2. Peter Nedved gets a hat trick for the Penguins. Sean Antelski gets ejected for the '96 Flyers. Mario Lemieux scores a hat trick. So Nedved with Lemieux scores 6 of the 8 goals for the Penguins in game number 4. Hextall is not doing well. Garth Snow is doing well. Brad Lauer is the guy who Antelski ruined. So at 2-2, it's looked good. Hextall needs a rest, so Garth Snow will come in. Penguins decided to keep Barrasso in the net. And the plan worked. The Penguins went 8-3. It was a close game, 2-2, but Garth Snow did not have a good third period. Renberg and Lindros made it 2-0 for the Flyers. Francis and Sandstrom 2-2. And then Garth Snow gives up 3 goals in 7 minutes. Sandstrom, Nedved and Subov 5-2. Peter Nedved made it 6-2. And Neil Wilkinson even scored for the Penguins with Chris Tamer, 8-3. Ron Hextall was not really that good in net. Sandstrom, Francis, and Nedved. So at 3-2, looks like the Penguins are going to win. They got to go back to Hextall. M. Thank you. Weird. And the Penguins take down the Philadelphia Flyers. So not good for the Flyers. They lose. By a score of 5-4, the Penguins win. Falloon and Lindros made it 2-0 Flyers. Brad Faddock made it 3-0. It's like, well, we go to game 7. Not so fast. Peter Nedved, Younger scored quickly in the middle period to make it 3-2. Third period, Lemieux scored to make it 3-3. Peter Nedved at 2:12 made it 4-3. And then Joe Sijic made it 5-3. Hextall's gone, Snow's in the net. Brad Fedek scored a two-man power play goal with Tamer and Chris Wells in the box, but the Flyers couldn't do a damn thing after that. Garth Snow did well in relief. Nedved, Fedek, and Maslin, the 3 stars of the game. Peter Nedved. Mario Lemieux proves his worthiness, and the Flyers don't prove their worthiness. Let's take a look at the 96 Flyers. Svoboda, Lindros, Desjardins, Haller, Dykels, Brandemore, Leclerc, Renberg, Charles Danielson, Antolsky, Falloon, Fedek, Patrick Sherlin, Howard Chuck, Drews, Kevin Deneen, Joe Otto, Chris Terry, and Phil Crow. Good. Pittsburgh uses Tamer, Lemieux, Nedved, Naslin, Wilkinson, Zubov, Mironov, Roche, Yager, LaRue, Lauer, Sandstrom, Francis, Sijic, Chris Joseph, J.J. Daniel, Smolinski, and Chris Wells. Well, they got the win. I feel bad for Philly fans. Oh, wait. No, I don't. Fuck them.